Today's daf is daf Yud Gimel, and we're up to the Mishnah, but let's just backtrack a little because we were somewhat rushed at the end of the shir. And what we're talking about is the Eved Kohen Shebarach, or for that matter, an Eshes Kohen Shemard al Baila. And in these cases, the Adon cannot give the get shichur to the Eved because he's out there AWOL, and the Baal cannot give his wife a get. And the din is that Ochlim B'Truma, despite the fact that the Baal wants to divorce or terminate the Avdus, which would mean that the Eved is no longer Kinyan Kaspo and the Isha is no longer Kinyan Kaspo, but nevertheless, they can continue eating Truma because right now they're in the Rishus of and Kanui to the Baal. So therefore, in these cases of an Eved Kohen or an Ashes Kohen, if the get is given to the Shliach, then it's a chova, it's a chova for the Eved or the Isha to terminate their rights, their license to eat Truma. So the Gemara is Shaper Ka'amal, and this is the underlying shita or argument of the Chachamim against Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that it's a schus for the Eved to go free, or for the Isha to be megar, or at least in the case of the Eved. And why is that? Why is that considered a schus? It's not a schus at all because the Eved is going to forfeit his rights to eat Truma. Rav answers, Hainu de koma hadri le b'masnisim mipnei shehu kinyana. What does that mean? The response of the Chachamim to the argument of Rabbi Meir is the following, that the reason why the Eved is allowed to eat Truma is because of Kinyan Kaspo, but what the Adon could do in this case, if the Eved is AWOL and is not available to receive the get shikur, he could just simply sell the Eved to Yisrael, and now the Eved no longer has the status of Kinyan Kaspo, and Shakel Arba Zuzi Yisrael, the Yisrael is going to purchase the Eved at a very slashed price, at a very cheap price, almost a nominal fee of 4 zuzi, which is, as we say in Yiddish, bubkis, compared to what an Eved is worth. But the answer is the Eved is somewhere flying through the globe. So the purchaser is going to pay a minimum price. But as a result of that kinyan, which the Adon could effectuate by finding a Yisrael who's willing to pay 4 zuzim, which is nothing, for the Eved, pasalei heichadisa, wherever the Eved is on the face of the earth, he can no longer eat Truma, because now he's owned by Yisrael and not by a Kohen. And therefore, this is the argument that it's not a schus for the Shliach to receive the get shechur the Eved and let me just make the mathematical calculation here. And right, I'm sorry. It's a schus for the shliach to accept the get shichur on behalf of the Eved and terminate the avdus. And the Chachamim's counter argument that maybe it's a chova. I'm sorry, and Rabbi Meir's argument that maybe it's a chova because the Eved would no longer be able to eat Truma if it's an Eved of a Kohen. That's not true because he will be mufka from eating Truma even if he doesn't accept the get shichur simply through a mechira. And therefore the Chachamim argue that that this is certainly just 1 second. This is certainly a schutz. Why? Because again, there's no downside here, because in any event, the Baal could be mafkia, the Adon could be mafkia for true. So now the Gemara asks Ula Rabbi Meir. Now Rabbi Meir holds that this is a chova because you're mafkia him from truma, Tenach Eved Kohen. If Rabbi Meir had only formulated his principle in the case of an Eved who was owned by a Kohen, then you could say that the get is a chov, because the get shikra is a chov because it passes the Eved from eating truma. But Eved Yisrael Ma'ikal Meimar, Rabbi Meir did not limit his ruling to the case of an Eved that's owned by a Kohen. And if the Eved is owned by Yisrael, then why is this a chova? You're not being mafkia the Eved from truma. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosef Neshim Afsido Shivcha Knanis. So the Gemara asks, Ad Rabbi Rei Matiro ben Baschorin. So why does the Eved find it more beneficial for him to be an Eved so they can marry a Shivcha Knanis, when if he was Meshuchra, he could marry even a Baschorin? And the Gemara says, Avda Befkeret Nichole, Zilale, Shchichole, Pritzole. It's, if the Eved is a Gadol, and as the Gemara calls it in Ksubas Tam, Tamadi Surah, so he's already used to living a life of Pritzus and Efkerus, and that's the way the Shvachos behave, and he doesn't respect her as a person. He's just having a fun with her, and he could be mezalzel ba kirtzono, and he's always hanging around with them, and it's a hisnagus of Pritzus. So by giving the shtach shichra b'mafkia the avdus, and therefore generating the isra on the Eved that he can no longer marry a shivcha, that's a chov for the Eved. And now we start the Mishnah here on Daf Yud Gimel. A man commands a shliach to deliver a get to his wife, or a shtach shichra to his Eved, or a matana to his colleague, and he dies before the shliach got a chance to fulfill his shlichus. Ha'omer tnu get le'ishti, ze le'ishti, shtar shichur ze li'avdi, umeis, lo yitno li'achar misa. This is the famous principle that we've discussed in the past of ein get li'achar misa. And since the gerushin, or the shikra, is not going to be chal until the shtar, the get, was handed over to the Eved, and in the meantime, before that happened, the Baal died. Therefore, the Eved or the Isha is no longer in the reshus of the Adon or the Baal, because he's gone. And therefore, there's no possibility of gerushin after his misa. Now, Tosfos says the following: that this din of Ein Get Lachem Misa is explicit in the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Beit. So why does our Mishnah here on Daf Yud Gimel feel compelled to repeat that which we have in a later Mishnah? He says that here there's a chiddush. The shliach received the get while the Baal, the Mishalech, was alive. And we might have a havamina to say that shlucho shaladim kimoso, the shliach, so to speak, steps into the shoes, proverbially, of the Mishalech, and therefore, as long as the shliach is alive, it's as if the Mishalech was alive, even though physically he's gone. So legally, there still could be a Baal to give the get. However, the maskana is, the Chiddush Van Mishnah is that although he stands in the place, the shliach stands in the place of the Mishalech for the Nesinas HaGet, however, after the death of the Mishalech of the Baal, Pakar Rishuso, and therefore there's no ishus or bailus over neither the ish or the Eved in order for the get to be chal. Tnu mana leish ploni. However, in the case of matana, where a man says before he gives the matana, he says to a shliach, give this matana, and then before the shliach gets to fulfill the shlichus, he dies, is then yitno lachar misa. And we're going to have a major machlokus in the Gemara as to why this is valid. Perhaps we're talking about a shchimera. Omar Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta mishmei de Rav. So we have to emphasize the word Rav here, because this whole sugya that we're about to learn revolves around the sheet of Rav. Rav limits the Mishnah in the case of Matana, that the shliach is allowed to deliver the shtar Matana even after the death of the nosein. The who, that's only shetziburin umunachin b'keren zavis. That whatever gift he wants to give is stashed up in the corner in a specific place that was designated, and therefore it's mana zeh tnu l'ploni. Give this to so and so. Mara says, I don't get it. There was never a kinyan that was implemented, neither by the shliach and certainly not by the makabel matana during the lifetime of the nosein. And now, after his death, the yarshim now take over the mama. So without a kinyan, what good is it if they were tziburin, if they were stashed up on one side? There was never a kinyan meshicha on the part of the zocher b'matana. V'ela b'shchimera. So we have no choice but to assume that the Mishnah is talking about a shchimera. No, the shchimera, we have halacha of divrei shchimera kiksum ksurim dami, which means we can circumvent the need for a kinyan. Is my ira tziburim, gain tziburim nami? Then why does Rav stipulate that this Mishnah only applies in the case of tziburim? In the case of a shchimera, divrei shchimera kiksum ksurim dami. So we circumvent the need for a kinyan. And what's this business here that it has to be stashed up, piled up in the corner? Amar Rav Zvid, and here we're going to have machlokes between Rav Zvid and Rav Papa. And the Gemara is going to not only analyze each shita separately, but analyze why each shita rejected the other shita. Li olam v'bari. Now, if it's a bari, you're asking, but where is the Maisa Kinyan? And Kid Rav Huna Amar Rav Amar Rav Huna Rav Madali biyadcha tneulo leploni b'mamet shloshtam kana. And here we introduce the principle of Maimin Shloshtam. Maimin Shloshtam is a takanas chachamim that allows a mafkid to say to the nifkad, that which you're holding on to, which is mine, and I gave it to you as a pikadon, don't give it back to me, but rather tneu lo leploni, give it to so-and-so. And now we have three people that are standing together at the same moment. We have the mafkid, we have the nifkad, meaning the shomer, and we have the makabel matan. And if they're all three standing there at the same time, kisha omdim shloshtam yachdav, then kana, then the makabel matana immediately makes a kinyan, and he owns that mana, even though the nifkad has not even given him over the mana. So we see that this takana of Maimed Shloshtam is another way that you can circumvent a kinyan. And our Mishnah is talking about a case of Maimed Shloshtam, where the Nosei Matana, in the presence of the Nifkad, says that this pikadon that I gave you, and is in your reshus, but it's mine, now belongs to so-and-so. Give it to this third guy, who's also standing by Maimed Shloshtam. And therefore, even if the mana itself was not delivered into the hands of the Makabel Matana until the Nosei Matana died, it doesn't matter, because his kinyan was immediate. And now we're adding another condition, that Maimed Shloshtam could only operate if it's tziburim. And the question is, why do we need tziburim? That's what the Gemara is going to analyze. But first, we're going to have a bar plukta of Rav Zvid in interpreting Rav. And that's Rav Papa. Rav Papa Amar Li Olam B'Shchimera. when Rav interpreted the Mishnah as referring specifically to Tziburim, he was referring to a Shkimra. You asked me if it's a Shkimra, Kiksuvim, Biksuvim, Dami, why do we need Tziburim? Kide Idoch the Rav. A different statement of Rav. The Omer Rav, Shkimra Sha'omar Tnu Mana Leploni Menachasai, Mana Zeh, Nosnim, but Mana Stam Ein Nosnim. Rav says that Divrei Shkimra are effective and valid to effectuate a kinyan, but only in the case of Mana Zeh, when you can point to the Mana about which, concerning which the Shkimra declared Tnu Mana Leploni, Mana Zeh, and there it is, there's the Mana. But if he only says Mana Stam, and the Shkimra on his deathbed declares that a Mana should be given over to someone, so ain't no snim, it's not valid. Why? Perhaps there's another Mana that's somewhere buried down in the karka, and that Mana was what the Shkimra had in mind that they should give over to this Makabel. No other Mana in the house was included in the Divrei Shkimra. The Shkimra did not have kavanah to give, in a general sense, any Mana, but rather he wanted the Mana that was mutman b'karka. And in this case, the Yarshim will not have to fork over any Mana whatsoever to the Makabel Matna Shkimra, because we are always choshesh that maybe what the Shkimra had in mind was a Mana cover. Therefore, Rav says to avoid the problem of Mana cover and effectuate the Tain Mana Leploni of a Shkimra, that it should be effective, we have to have Tziburin. Once we have Tziburin, and the Shkimra points to that pile, and he says Tain Mana Leploni, then we're not choshesh for a Mana cover, and the Divrei Shkimra Achal. The Gemara adds a comment here that although Rav, according to Rav Papa, was concerned with, in the case of Monastam, a Monakavur, Hilchasag L'Kvur Lo Chayshida. We don't have to be choshesh for that second din of Rav, that when the Shkimra said Tei Mana Leploni, he had in mind a Monakavur. And therefore, even in the case of Monastam, the Yarshim will have to fork over a Mana for this Makabel Matan. Because Matna Shkimra Kiksuvim Surindam. Practic Gemara my time by Rav Papa my time alo Omer Rav Zvid. Why couldn't Rav Papa accept Rav Zvid's interpretation that our Mishnah is talking about a bari? Why do you have to push in a Shkimra to our Mishnah? And why not assume it was b'maimat shloshka?